Welcome back to the PI show. This is the third segment. It's a very special segment, and tonight we're blessed with the presence of Viv.
Hello.
Who's going to read out some questions and deals with emails and queries that you have.
I've passed the baton over to her, Harry.
You have, yeah.
Thanks,
so instead
Tony.
of Tony's question, Tony's mailbag, it's Viv's mailbag for this series. Viv, we've got quite a few questions to get through. Perhaps we'll just start with the first.
Sure, we've been inundated. Thanks so much to all you viewers for writing in over the last 6 months. So we'll do our very best to answer your questions every week. The first email comes from Martha from Glen Waverley. She writes, last year I had a fall at a Melbourne restaurant and now my right hip requires surgery to have a pin or plate inserted. I'm still receiving treatment at the moment and I'm inquiring as to whether I would have a claim for negligence against the restaurant for medical expenses and or loss of wages. Kindly advise. Thanks, Martha. Tony, what are your thoughts?
All these cases, the first issue is always liability. You've got to prove fault on the part of the restaurateur, the occupier. Now, what you probably need is to go and have a look at the restaurant. We, as lawyers, you always want photos, forensic material, and once you get past the issue of liability, the next question is you need more than 5% damage to satisfy the provisions of the Wrongs Act, which is the legislation within which
For pain and suffering only?
Yes.
Yeah. So medical expenses and loss of wages you can still claim?
Yeah, that's correct.
So it doesn't matter that she's been working part-time, full-time?
Well, the injury itself would probably get over the 5% in any
Yeah, we think the injury is more than 5%.
Yeah.
But look, the first thing is you get a very detailed statement from her about what happened. You ask whether there are any witnesses to what happened. Ask whether the incident was reported on the night. There might have been an ambulance attending. So you need to get as much information as you can about actually what happened on the night and the particulars of the accident. So, as I say, I think photos, witnesses, her statement are terribly important.
Yeah, going back to the site's critical in case it changes. You need
there might have been changes that have been involved. And also how she's described the incident to the doctors after the accident. That's all terribly important about establishing fault and whose fault it was.
See, what we don't know, it could have been defective tiles, it could have been carpet, or she could have tripped over her own feet.
Or something spilling, dare I say, on a dance floor.
Yeah.
We ran a case recently where someone got up where they were at a restaurant function and they slipped on a dance floor. And they didn't have sufficient...
well, there was tables on the dance floor, which is...
Yeah, they didn't monitor the serving of food and alcohol properly.
Right.
And the person got up. So... and secondly, the medical expenses would be paid for if she succeeded. Okay. She'd be probably on Medicare or private health insurance. So,
and also, Harry, if she had problems looking after herself and looking after the house and all sorts of things, she might be entitled to what they call Griffiths and Kirkby entitlements, which is the cost of home services.
Caring for it,
At home.
So, yeah.
And that's even services provided by family members, maybe a spouse or children, things like that. So it could
I'm
be...
sure she wasn't aware of all of that.
Yeah. She's got a claim if there's negligence. Okay. If there's no negligence, there's no claim. That's it.
Thanks very much for that, Martha. We hope we've managed to answer a couple of your questions. We have another question. This one's from John Lancel. He wrote this in December last year. He says, "G'day, several of my friends have motorised wheelchairs and they're also pensioners. I understand that they are covered if they are hit by a car, but what happens if they do the hitting? Should they take out several separate third-party liability insurance or some sort of comprehensive cover? Do you know which companies supply the insurance?" Tony?
Two parts. If they've got their own property and they've got a homeowner's policy, which is mainly contents, which has public liability attached to it, I would have thought that that policy would protect them if they injured someone in negligent circumstances, where they ran someone over. If they did not have contents insurance, because they were probably retirees, then that raises another interesting aspect, doesn't it, Harry?
Well, they'd have to take out separate insurance, which we think would be fairly small.
Very small.
But generally, if they're at home and they've got what's called household and contents insurance, they're insured. Generally, that insurance often picks up
Negligent acts.
negligent acts outside the home if they're having to defend the case. It partly depends on the wording of the policy. So you've got to pull out the policy, look at it, and
ring
dare I
it
say,
if-
maybe get
legal advice if in doubt.
Legal
maybe get
advice.
legal advice.
Yep.
Yeah. So there's definitely no cause under TAC at all. It's
No.
definitely
It's not a registered vehicle.
It's not a registered motor vehicle,
So that's the
so they
difference.
wouldn't be covered
Okay.
if they injured someone.
And just quickly, Viv, if it was a cyclist, for example, that ran someone over, they've also got separate insurance if they want to protect themselves.
Oh, okay. That's
Yeah.
great. So we have another question. This one's from Catherine Rogers. Thanks, Catherine, for writing in. She writes, I received a back injury in the workplace through negligence and had to have emergency surgery 3 years ago. I now have a 10% Category 3 whole person impairment. I'm going to court to ask for a serious injury certificate and I would like to know what my chances of getting one is. Thanks, Catherine. So just firstly, should we explain what a 10% Category 3 whole impairment might be?
Yeah, that's under an American guide where doctors assess it under tables, and it's based partly on movement and partly on damage to backs. So there's different categories, and 10%'s under what's called an American guide.
Harry, what they've done is the recent guides they've been using, movement's almost out of the equation now when it comes to backs. What they generally look at is they look at X-rays and things like that, and
the damage to the discs. But prima facie, it probably does meet a criteria of serious injury. She'd probably succeed in court, but the main thing that the judges look at and lawyers look at would be the consequences to her of a back injury.
Okay.
So you've got to have serious consequences, and if there are consequences serious, treatment, medication, loss of enjoyment of life, loss of mobility, all those things count towards serious consequences.
And the thing about her case is that there's two aspects of it. One, pain and suffering, and also loss of income. So she have to satisfy both tests.
Okay.
Yeah.
But realistically, she probably should see a lawyer
She
if
should
she
see a
hasn't
lawyer.
already seen one. So
Yeah.
Okay. Great.
That's all we've got time for, and we've got to wrap up this first episode. I think it's very exciting times for the PI show, and we look forward to seeing you next week.
Thank you, viewers.
Thank you.
Thank you.